Charlene DeCesare, welcome to the Modern Sales Management Show.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm really excited about our conversation because you have such a unique perspective on building relationships and driving sales.
Thank you. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get right into it. So before we get into the meat of the advice that you have for our audience, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in sales and sales management?
Yeah, I have been in sales since age 16. My very first job ever was in sales and retail. And it was always the thing that I knew I could do, even when in college, my degree is actually in communication disorders, working with deaf and blind children. But at some point, I realized I liked making money. So what was my side hustle, kind of a way to make some cash, became my full-time gig, essentially, after college. And I've just always loved it. I've worked in startups and I've worked in multi-billion-dollar organizations like Gartner and Bright Horizons and others. And now been on my own for 5 years, a little over 5 years.
Oh, wow. So I've seen you speak. I've read your books. One of the through lines through what you talk about is that sales should be fun and easy. What do you mean by that, and why is it important?
Yeah, well, I'll start with why it's important. One of the things that drives me every day is I have a very keen sense of my own mortality. Maybe it comes from, I lost my parents a few years ago. Both my mom and my dad passed away in a short period of time. And it just sort of reinforced this idea that life is short and we spend a lot of time at work and doing what it is we do for a career. And it always really struck me that I wanted to wake up every day and look forward to what I had on my plate and be the person I could be. And I meet so many salespeople and business owners and sales leaders who are so miserable because it's just growing their business feels so painful. And so it really is inherent to my mission to help them see that when they have the right mindset, and then we also work on messaging and method, that it doesn't have to be that way, that there should be enough alignment and resonance, and it should feel good to them so that they look forward to going out to work every day. And that when they're in that sort of sales role or that sales management role, it feels like the thing they want to be doing, and they can really be themselves while they're doing it.
Now, when you're working with a company and you're brought in by the CEO or VP of sales, and they're not having fun and they're not productive, I don't think you're brought in because the main pain point is that people aren't having fun. People aren't having fun because
Right.
It's a symptom of other things. Where do you start? What do you evaluate? Is it mindset, process, messaging? Where do you start?
Yeah, it's interesting. I like to start on the message. I know you're probably talking about this later, but I wrote a book called The Email Cemetery. So I have this obsession with sales emails, and this is not to be confused like the marketing stuff. It's really the one-to-one messaging. And anytime a CEO leader comes to me, I'm like, let me see the emails your people are sending. Because to me, that message will always betray the mindset and the method or the process. It just shows through. I'm like a detective when I look at those messages, because it will tell me, for example, if somebody's apologizing a lot in their emails, it means they haven't really bought into the value of what they're selling. And there's work to be done on the management side to help instill that mission and help people really get that ownership so that every time they reach out to somebody new, they don't feel like they're asking for a favor. They feel like they're doing a favor, that they're able to serve and give, and it comes from such a different place. Similarly, I'll look at, emails that start with my name is, we do this, we do that, we love to, I would like to, all that ego language, the I's and the we's, because what that tells me is that, again, from the top down, that they haven't done a good job of internalizing the real needs and goals and feelings and thoughts of their target audience, because they're talking about themselves. The sellers talking about themselves, would really should always be about the buyer. So that message really gives me a lens into kind of how people are thinking. And then the other thing on the process side that a message will show me is if someone is saying, oh, I've sent like 10 messages, I sent out a proposal, and this guy just is ghosting me, like they're just in the black hole. to me, that's actually a process issue. And that, again, comes from the leadership perspective, the organizational perspective, that puts something in place as simple as every time you're in a meeting, you book the next meeting. Every time you're about to send out a proposal, you book the proposal review meeting. Every time you review a proposal and you're waiting for a decision, you book the decision meeting. It's this is what I mean when you're talking earlier about being like fun and easy. When you do it that way, you're not chasing people down. You don't feel like you're being a pest. It just happens organically. And it also, by the way, you shorten the sales cycle, make a lot more money, which, let's face it, I'm in sales. You got to be a little coin operated. So that's important.
So how did you land on sales email messaging as that leading indicator? You didn't come up through the copywriting path in your career, but how did you pinpoint that as the first stop in your analysis?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of evolved over time. So when I first started, coaching salespeople, and I could sense when I'm talking to them, and even sales leaders as well, that there's some kind of head trash there, and I was trying to just figure out what it was. And so, we just kind of work through the process. And to me, my background is communications. So I do look at, even though it didn't start as emails, it's always like, well, how do you talk to people? If you're a leader, how do you talk to your people? How do your people talk to your customers, right? And so to me, the emails really became a diagnostic tool. But really when it started to set in is when I realized that I was building my brand. And, I'm very, I have a very public social footprint. So people know me online as Charlene Ignites, and I'm everywhere from LinkedIn to TikTok. And so as a result, I get solicited to a lot. I get a ton of sales emails sent to me. And so over time, I just maybe 2-3 years ago, I just started saving them and making notes of why they were so bad and why I would never write back to these people. And then one day, just for fun, I wrote a blog called The Email Cemetery, and it just became a thing, I guess. But it was really, in a weird way, almost more being on the buyer side that made me so aware of it than even work I was doing on the sales advising, training, coaching side.
That makes sense, because it is one of the artifacts that an organization has that is, I guess, most visible to see what's really going on. Interviewing salespeople, listening to sales calls is harder, more time consuming, and a little bit more subjective.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that happens is, leadership, they're investing a ton of money into marketing, and they're so thoughtful about the messaging that's on their website and their email campaigns. And then they hire salespeople and they're kind of like, good luck, God bless, go get us some deals. And they don't usually, my experience is, especially smaller organizations, until they've really created the right systems and processes, they might not even know what emails their people are sending, right? It's like the Wild West. I realized this when I was running a company, and I was so personally invested in every message that went out from a marketing perspective. And then one day I started really looking at what my salespeople were sending out, and I was like, I was horrified, because there was such a disconnect on all the thought we put into the marketing side. And then the salespeople just going back to, in many ways, it's just a bunch of old habits. You get used to saying certain things like, I'm just following up, or I would like to, I would love to. And every one of those words is inherent with flawed mindset that will not move the deal forward.
So do you advise companies to use a set playbook, set of semi-customizable templates, and everybody working from the same messaging and tone? Or is there a framework and mindset that you overlay on salespeople where they can be more authentic, more themselves, which is the right path for the right organization?
Yeah, what I advise is, and why I love working with leaders, and why I work a lot on the business side of things, even before the sales side of things, is to really tap into your core values. What are you all about? How does that translate to the messages you want to send? So for example, if you are a client-centric organization and one of your core values is to always put the client first, you want to give that and teach your salespeople to use that as a filter. So they don't need a script if every time they send an email, before they hit send, they look down and they say, does this say I, me, what, my, our, or does it say you, based on our discussion, when you're trying to achieve this goal, according to your website, when you mention this goal, whatever it is, it's just a filter. I often get sort of pushed to help people create templates, and I will, very loosely, because I want people to sound like themselves. When they have sort of this filter of principles and core values, they can do that. When they're given a script or a template, because I want the email, first of all, we talk a lot about emails, but people have got to pick up the phone. So I can't stress that enough. That's like the last line of my whole book is pick up the damn phone. So if you're counting on a template, when you pick up the phone, you're going to sound like a robot, and it's going to scream sales a mile away. But by having those filters, it lets you sort of customize the language within boundaries. That said, I'm pretty bossy about words I will say never to use or very rarely to use, or phrases that I think will kill your deal, versus ways to phrase it so that you are more likely to get the next step or the meeting or close the deal.
How do you convey those values and instill that authenticity in a team rather than individual in a way that sticks? What do you need to monitor? How long does it take?
Yeah, I think what happens is when people, especially founders, they create their business, they start hiring people, and they wrap a lot of energy around what's our vision, what's our mission, and they come up with some cool little paragraph or some words that they stick on a wall somewhere in the hallway, right? Sometimes it's a cute little acronym, or whatever it might be, and it just becomes like this sort of memorized thing that they're trying to instill in people. The best thing a leader can do as an organization is that, let's say you're having an all hands meeting, ask a few people, stand up and describe what our core values are. Don't read it, don't look at the wall, don't read it from our website. In your own words, how would you describe what we're here to do? And if they're off track, help course correct them, because one of the challenges is that if you're the founder or the leader or somebody who's got a lot of skin in the game, you've already internalized the value. You are already like, it's seeping out of your pores. And then you hire salespeople who, they're just learning, right? And so transferring, kind of getting that like mission osmosis, it takes a little coaching, it takes some work. And the only way to get people to do it is to allow them to be imperfect and to help them fine tune and let them stumble over their words a little bit, in a non-judgmental kind of atmosphere. And that's why, from a broader business perspective, what a leader can do is create a culture of where imperfection is allowed, where people are allowed to kind of dare to be ugly, as they say, and figure out how to interpret what the company's trying to do in their own words, so that when they are speaking to one of your clients or prospects, they're coming from such a genuine, passionate place. And maybe their words are slightly different than the words on the wall, but it will resonate with that customer in such a powerful way, in a much more authentic way, so you'll be more successful.
I really like that approach. It's so simple. It's so human. It's not overly systematized.
Yeah. And that's at the core of like everything I tell people. If you ever feel like you're in like this box where somebody gives you like scripts and steps and say this, so, nobody can really function. I mean, never did I suck more, even when, I used to have a $38 million a year quota, but as soon as somebody said like, read this, do it this way, say things like, have you been eaten by an alligator? Like, I couldn't do it. I sounded terrible. I wasn't successful. I didn't make any money. I had to find my own path and my own way of doing those things, in alignment with, again, the core values, the mission, the culture of the business.
So if you had to boil it down in just a couple points, what works today in getting attention and building relationships?
Yeah, it starts with building the relationship, actually. And in a weird way, the unique thing is just to be human. It's reaching out, remembering you're a human being, reaching out to another human being, and to make an authentic connection in some way. Divorce yourself from whether you make a sale or not. And I know that sometimes that might be like sound a little revolutionary coming from a sales trainer, but if you go into it thinking, I got to close this deal, I got to convince this guy, it just, again, it's right now, particularly where I think we went through a phase where a lot of people backed off their sales efforts. And I feel like right now is like full court press, at least judging by the amount of emails and LinkedIn messages I'm getting. And I'll tell you what, when I get an email that's like paragraphs long and someone's working so hard to convince me of the value, I'm just like, delete. Like, I just don't have time for that, you know? So anyway, so simplistic way to say that is be a human being, focus on making a connection. Your first and only goal when you're trying to get attention, get that first prospect to pay attention to you, is just to get a meaningful conversation. That is the only thing you are selling, is a connection and a meaningful conversation, which isn't about you being interesting and saying, you know, why you're so fabulous and why they want to talk to you. From that perspective, it's more of like what you know about them or what you want to know about them. And be, again, human, be a little different. Don't send that generic email that says like, I'm interested in learning about your goals and objectives. Like, yeah, you and everybody else, brother, you know?
Absolutely. Do people spend too much time trying to craft the perfect persuasive message when they should spend more time on being human?
All the time. This is exactly why I say this should be fun and easy. If you're agonizing and procrastinating and you're like, yeah, I know I should make more calls, I know I should reach out to more people, and it feels like this huge project, right? I mean, my dad used to have a great expression, which was, if you're forcing it, you're doing it wrong. If you're forcing it, you're doing it wrong. So if you feel like you're forcing it, like you're just, it's like the bane of your existence is like picking up the phone or reaching out to strangers on LinkedIn, then it's just, you know, shift your approach to like, these are interesting people that you get the opportunity to get, potentially to get to know and share something of yourself. And then you can mutually decide on next steps, if any.
Right.
And that's it.
Potentially help them, maybe, maybe not, maybe in a single phone call, maybe in a larger way. But it starts with that connecting with somebody on a human level.
Yeah. And the thing is, we know just based on the data that it takes at least 7 touches, sometimes up to 12, to really fully engage someone, and particularly to get to where you're going to have any shot at closing a deal. I've never seen anybody do it in one, unless you have a very transactional, like sort of commodity easy product. If you have something that your business is like, welcome to Burger King, may I take your order? Great. Like, give them the price, tell them what it is, tell them how great it is. And then they say, yes, I would like to buy now. You know, most of the people I work with, most of the people I see that are struggling with this, that is not the case. It's going to take multiple interactions. So take the pressure off yourself, take the pressure off the person you're reaching out to. Just be a person.
So when you're up on stage speaking about this and teaching a room full of chief revenue officers, directors of sales, VPs of sales. Oh, hold on. My background just fell. I'm going to start that question again. What I'm going to ask you, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Never had that happen before.
Do you have cats?
Yeah, no, it's ghosts. Oh, perfect. Okay, so who's calling? All right. So I'm going to ask you when you're on stage, what are the if you could tell these leaders to stop doing a few things today, what are the biggest mistakes you see, and what should they stop doing immediately? So, all right. All right. So when you're on stage speaking about this, let me start again, because I think I had an all right in there. Charlene, when you're on stage speaking about this and teaching a room full of chief revenue officers and VPs of sales and directors of sales, if you could tell them to stop doing 2 or 3 things today, what are the biggest mistakes that you see that you want to draw the line right then and there and say, guys, stop doing this?
Yeah, I think one goes to something we just said earlier, which is prescribing the script. So the thing that you say all the time may or may not work for the people who work for you. And then I think it is just, you know, allowing that culture of risk taking and people being able to kind of play around with the words and role play in a safe environment. That's also, by the way, at a bigger level, how you create an innovative culture. You want people to be able to make mistakes and to learn. And if people feel so pressured to be, say things the perfect way and impress you, I think that's going to, lead to people either not being happy or not doing it well or just not improving. And then just from a sales leadership perspective, I put a lot of emphasis on helping people figure out how to have those sales meetings in a really effective way and to use them not as like a report out, not as like doing the stuff you could do over email, but really using those meetings as coaching opportunities to look back at what happened last week. For example, we call these review and plan meetings. Look back at what happened last week, what went well, what didn't go well, no judgment, continuous improvement. And then what do you have coming up this week? Let's work through it. How can I help you? What are you struggling with? What are you nervous about? And also the other big thing is to anchor the positive, celebrate the wins, put a lot of effort into rewarding whatever the win is. Maybe it's making a difficult conversation. Maybe it's getting somebody re-engaged who did go in the black hole. It's not just always about closing the deals and getting the revenue in, although again, got to have that happen. But the way that our brains are wired, we are wired to negative. We're wired to, in many cases, many leaders are wired to, let's get down to business. We need results. And I've been in a few sales meetings where it just felt very operational. And salespeople need to be motivated. They need that encouragement. And our brains need positive reinforcement because it's just not how we're naturally wired. But man, it's super invigorating and energizing when you have a leader who really wants to be there by your side, wants to coach you and help you, and also allows you to say, hey, I'm struggling over here. How do I say this? Or what's this mean? And I know we talked about this 10 times, but I don't know how to do it, So create that culture, and then any little win you see, make sure you acknowledge it. I work with one CEO that what he does is every day when we're in the office, now I'm going to do it virtually, but he would come into his office and he would put 10 paper clips on the side of his desk, on the right side of his desk. Every time he paid a compliment or acknowledged a win or anchored the positive, he'd take one paper clip, put it to the other side of his desk. And he would not leave the office until he had all 10 paper clips from one side to the other. And it's such a great sort of tactical reminder. And it's easy to forget when we're in this like go mode and just super focused on the goals we're trying to achieve and trying to be operationally excellent.
So after you're done speaking, whether it's one of your talks or you're asked to speak about your book, The Email Cemetery, and you close out the speech or you close out the talk and everybody claps, some people start leaving the room. There's a certain group of people that somewhat rush the stage. They have some follow-up questions for you. What are the top questions that you get or situations that people bring to you in those scenarios?
Yeah, the question about, what do I do if someone's ghosting me? What do I do when I think I've had a great meeting and then, they go off into the black hole? I got that question so much, I actually created a whole talk just on that because and again, I love that topic because it is basically a symptom of all three things I talked about: the mindset, the message, and the method. And then I think I get a lot of people who are just new and they feel like they've been put into the sales role and in some cases into a sales leadership role. And really, they don't really know it. They're just like, I'm just learning it on my own. I'm just trying to figure it all out. So I think just looking for any quick tips, anything that'll be helpful. And particularly on the leadership side, it's pretty common for someone who is a top performer to be put into a leadership position when really they know how to sell, but they don't know how to lead. So that's where that kind of crossover of skills has to happen. But those are some common scenarios.
I appreciate you sharing that with us. I want to wrap up today by pointing out that you do a lot of motivational speaking, not just tactical speaking. So my question for you is, what inspires you?
I'll tell you what, I wake up every day. I'm a very early riser and I watch the sun come up and it's a new day. And it's funny, on my Instagram, I have a lot of pictures of sunrises because it never fails to impress me. It never fails to inspire me. And it's like, today I have such an opportunity to create the experience of a life that I want to live. To me, that is the most inspiring thing.
So That's a really good note to end on. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm everywhere as Charlene Ignites. So I have charleneignites.com, Charlene Ignites on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And I always am happy to have a conversation. Anybody who's struggling with a small thing, a big thing, for me, this is fun and easy, and I consider it like an honor and a privilege to talk to people and to give them quick tips. And whether or not that turns into anything, official or formal or like a big gig, again, I practice what I preach. I have to be a good steward of my own teachings. So for me, I just want to connect with people. Please do reach out to me, and whether it's to make a connection or I can help, it's all good.
There's several people on my sales team that follow you very closely, and they love your TikTok.
Oh, good. That's great. Yeah, I was a late adopter to that, but I have 2 teenage kids that sort of forced me into it. And I have to tell you, it's been one of the best things I've ever done for my business too. So it's good.
That's great. So before we go, is there any final advice that you'd have for sales leaders who are listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, just, there's a reason, particularly if you've been part of the business, from an early stage, there's a reason you got involved in your business. And in many cases, it was because you saw other businesses that didn't run the way you wanted them to, or other products that didn't represent what you wanted it to. Just be willing to be you, right? I have a sign behind me. It says, be you, the world will adjust. It's so easy to fall into that want. This is the way corporate does it. Step back from the language, step back from the way it's always done or the way it's always said, and really think, like, does this feel exactly right to me? Does it really speak from my voice? And be willing to be different. In some cases, there's an old quote, sometimes being different is better than being better. So be willing to be different, be yourself. And even if you don't change the results, you will feel so much better about everything you do.
I can attest to that. Every time that I am not my authentic self in a business environment, whether I'm trying something that I read in a book or heard in a talk, or just trying to be something that I'm not, it has not worked out. And it's a constant discipline to try to get back to my true self. And that's when I get results.
Love it.
So thank you so much for this conversation today. It was really insightful. And that does it for another episode of the Modern Sales Management Show. Thank you for listening.